Hi, welcome back. It's been a while. I have been getting over a cold, lost my voice there for a few days, and I'm feeling better, but stayed home and thought about doing a silent video, actually, in the style of Hipshot's stop motion playthrough videos, which are really cool, but it goes without saying that my movie editing skills and movie maker are crap still, at the moment at least. So one of these days, eventually. Before we jump into my next big project, here's a spoiler. This should be starting up in the next day or two, hopefully. We're going to be doing a quick video here for my Games for Two series, which I've kind of been neglecting, dedicated to two-player friendly non-war games in my collection that I really enjoy, intend on keeping, but rarely play for one reason or another, mainly because I feel that they're drastically better with an opponent than they are soloing both sides. Nonetheless, this game is probably the most solitaire friendly of the games that I've covered so far, but still, because of the very low level of luck and random elements, almost said elephants, in the game, I'd much rather play it with another player. Still not bad solitaire. I've tried it using a die to maybe kind of randomize the starting path, but it's a game that comes with two scenarios, four sides, four perspectives to explore, and a game that I enjoy very much. The game is Antike Duellum. Well, that was a long intro. This is the two-player version of Antike, part of the Rondel series by designer Mac Gertz. This was published in 2012. It's two-player only. I was originally interested in his game Navegador, but when I saw that he had this strictly two-player game, it really drew my attention. Ended up picking it up. I think it's still readily available around $20–25 or so, and have enjoyed it. Haven't played it all that much. Still quite a bit left for me to explore, but if you like these Euro games with these ancient themes or military/economic themes that are quite spatial and abstract in a way, I would definitely recommend this. It's the first and only game by this designer that I've played. I was interested in this wheel thing. I do have a couple of other games that have a similar mechanism. Glenmore's one that has more of kind of a rotating belt of tiles kind of thing, tile laying aspect. And then the game Shipyard, which is Rondel Mania, that I've yet to play with other players, but I'm really looking forward to doing so. So let's set up the board, which takes seconds, and I guess I'll kind of give you a gist of how the game is played and maybe try to come up with some final thoughts. Alright, here's the board all set up and ready to go with our initial city tokens, 3 for each player on the map and their starting locations. These are fixed setup locations for each of the players in both scenarios. That does encourage a certain pattern of expansion, especially in certain areas in the beginning. We have also our 2 player discs on the victory point track on the 0 box. This track goes up to 9. The first person to reach 9 victory points wins the game, and that is the only kind of game end condition. And we have the game stones in the center of the rondel. We have these two boxes, one for the Carthaginian player, one for the Roman player, that contains in the beginning one of these wooden pieces representing a galley, a military unit, legion here, basically land and sea military units, and a little track here with various know-hows, is what they call it, technologies. And each of these city tokens represents one of three resources. You start with one gold-producing city, one marble production center, and one that produces iron. Over here to the left you can see the Carthaginian players' starting supply, their resources, three each of iron, gold, and marble, as well as a coin for being the randomly determined second player in our game here. Additional military units, legions, and galleys ready to be recruited into the box before they're deployed onto the map. Additional discs to mark technologies that you've acquired, and a starting town wall to help fortify your cities. Above here there's the bank with more resource tokens, coins, town walls, city tokens, and these cool chunky wooden white temple bits that you can build in your cities to increase the efficiency of production. Over on this side of the board we have the Romans' starting supply of stuff, and then have these player aids out in the form of these cards. Double-sided, very handy, English on one side, German on the other, like everything else in this game. It's the bilingual edition. A little reminder of what each of the actions on the rondel represents, and here we have each of the technologies, what they're called, those in more detail, sequence of play over here. And then we have a bunch of cards. And this is the thing that I really like about this game, these event cards. This gives the game a little bit of unpredictability, a little bit of randomness, a little bit of luck, and offers a very tight game experience, I think. Basically, we have a draw pile here, and in the beginning of the game you reveal 3 events, and that's kind of the offering that you can choose from when given the opportunity. Basically, when something bad happens to you, like you lose a city to your opponent, or your opponent gains a victory point, which is represented by these cards over here. There are 5 different types. Here is a close-up of each of the 5 types of what the game refers to as personages, basically achievements that get you victory points, and they're limited by the card mix. There's the King, Citizen, General, Scholar, Navigator cards. There's some flavor, famous people names up top, and then a description of the achievement down at the bottom. You gain a King card every time, for every 5th city that you own at the end of your turn. So once you built your 5th city, you can gain your first King card, and upon building your 10th city, when you have 10 cities on the board at the end of the turn, you gain a second one. Whenever you gain any of these achievement cards, they can never be lost. So you can have a situation where you own 5 cities and then your opponent takes control of one of them, you're down to 4, you still get to keep that card. It just takes you a bit longer to work towards that second King card. Here we have the Citizen card you gain for every 3 temples that you've built, 3 temples that you own in your cities. Same thing, temples may be destroyed. For every temple of your opponents that you destroy, you gain a General card. For every know-how or technology that you gain, gets you a Scholar card. And this one is the Navigator card, and you get one for every 7 or more seas that you sail. On the board itself, there are sea areas that have a little galley icon depicted on it that represents 2 sea areas, and those can only be navigated, sailed, occupied by your galley type military unit. We also, of course, got a rule book, brief, pretty clear, 7 pages, lots of examples, color, graphics, a variant here that comes with these 2 double-sided tokens I've yet to use. I use this actually to keep track of whose turn it is because I usually solo the game. Development notes, some tips, reminders, a couple of blank event cards, that was nice, a promotional card / bookmark, another player aid, full color, 2-sided, opens up with the German text on the inside, game setup, more descriptions and examples of what each of the actions on the rondel represents, and we'll go back to the board and take a look at that here shortly. And most interestingly, I think, this little pamphlet, this booklet of historical background information, which is quite interesting if you're not familiar with the theme. Here is a super close-up of the rondel wheel action thingy. You, at the beginning of the game, place your pieces in the center of the wheel, and on your first turn you can choose any one of the 7 actions for free, one of which is depicted twice, by placing your pawn in that section, that slice of the wheel. And then from that point forward, at the beginning of every turn, you move your player piece in a clockwise direction. You can choose any one of the next 3 actions for free, and for each additional space that you move forward along the wheel, you pay 1 resource of any type. It could be marble, iron, gold, or coin. Alright, I'm going to try to give you a sense of each of these actions here. So basically, starting with militia, or arming in the English translation, this allows you to deploy units from your recruitment box to a friendly city. It costs 2 iron per unit, and you can place up to 1 unit in a friendly city. If there is a temple in that city, you can place up to 3. And you can recruit more units into your box here by taking the science action. It costs 1 gold to place a legion from your supply into the box, 2 for each galley. During this action, you can also purchase know-hows. And there's kind of a race going on over here. There are 5 different types. If you're the first person to purchase a know-how, a certain type, you pay the higher amount of gold, the number to the left of the slash. You gain the benefit, and at the end of your turn, you gain a percentage for each such know-how that you acquire. The second person to acquire a know-how pays the lesser amount of gold, gains the benefit, but doesn't gain the percentage. And then there are these production actions, marble, iron, and gold. This allows you to produce more resources with your cities. You gain 1 resource for each matching city. If there's a temple in that city, instead of 1, that city produces 3 resources, and on top of all of that you gain a coin. There is this temple action that allows you to build temples and town walls by paying lots of marble to build a temple, but well worth it. It increases not only the production rate, but also the defense strength of the city from a base of 1 to 3. And for each adjacent temple on the map, you have to pay an additional coin, and then you can build a town wall as well. These are limited both to 1 per city. The town wall increases the defense strength of the city by 1. And then you also have these 2 maneuver actions, and this allows you to move your units. The legion starts with a movement allowance of 1. The galleys also with 1. The legions move across these red borders, the galleys across blue borders. And I should mention here, there are technologies that increase their movement allowance by 1. Roads help legions, navigation helps galleys. As far as the technologies go, we also have currency, republic, and trade. Currency increases the production rate of cities by 1. Republic increases the defense strength of your cities by 1. And then trade allows you to exchange any 3 resources with 2 of any type with the bank. If you move into a region that contains an enemy unit of the same type, those units engage in combat. So for example, if we moved 2 legions into this area, all 4 would go back to their recruitment boxes for later deployment. If there well, let's say there was a galley there instead and we moved a legion, then the 2 units would just remain where they are. And then during this action we can also attempt to conquer cities after movement, enemy cities. So let's say we had a Roman marble producing city here, and let's say they had a town wall, very well defended, and a temple. The base strength of the city is 1, increased to 3 by the temple, another +1 for the town wall, and then they get +1 for each unit defending the city. So we have a strength of 5 here, and we just need to match that. So we move 5 units of any type into the region and just cancel out 1 to 1, going back to the recruitment box. The town wall gets destroyed with 1 unit. Town wall goes back to the owning player's supply for future building during the temple action. Then another 3 to destroy the temple, and you gain a percentage for destroying a temple, and this gets flipped over. The owning player would, the Roman player in this case, would gain an event because they lost the city. They would also gain an event for every personage that you win. And I think that sums it up. After you take your action, you can then found new cities by spending 1 marble, 1 gold, and 1 iron in a region that is occupied by one of your military units, and that doesn't contain a city token. You then get to choose one of the 3. Let's do this over here. So let's say we build an iron city here. But instead of that, if we choose to build marble or gold here instead, we'd also have to pay an additional coin for each adjacent region that contains a city of the same type. And finally, at the end of your turn is when you determine how many personages you win. And for each one that you win, you move up the victory point track. If you land on a box that has this town wall symbol, then you get to take one of those from the bank into your supply to build later during the temple phase, temple action. For each personage that you gain, your opponent gets to draw an event card. Alright, so let's see if I can do 2 things at once and slowly show you some of the cards in this event deck as I give you my thoughts on the game. This is a game that I really enjoy. It's one of the few strictly 2-player Euro games in my collection that feels like a proper board game and not just a card game. Nothing wrong with card games, but sometimes it's nice to sit in front of a board and move pieces on the board rather than dealing constantly with a handful of cards. The turns go by very quickly. There's very little downtime, but there can be many turns. So the game still can kind of take quite a while to play, over an hour probably. That may be a little too long for some people. For what it is, a fairly low complexity game. There are card games that I've alluded to that are 2-player friendly and more complex than this game, but this game still has quite a lot to chew on, lots of strategies to explore. It has been brought to my attention by the board game blogger, check out his excellent video review of this game, that the game may fall victim to dominant strategy syndrome, and I haven't played it enough to know. I haven't tested the theory yet, but it does make sense to me, at least partially. I would agree with that assessment that in the beginning, in the opening of the game, it may make sense to go heavy marble, big temple, and take advantage of the strength of those temples in terms of production and defense. But I still think that skill plays quite a role in the game, and that the mid game can be fairly unpredictable. The end game can still be very tense. These cards, these event cards, are as was mentioned, a great catch-up mechanism, a nice dash of kind of a little bit of unpredictability. You do get to choose among three open-faced. Whenever something terrible happens to you or something great happens for your opponent, whenever you lose a city and whenever your opponent gains a victory point. So the game is not so cruel after all. Even though the title it seems kind of daunting, the game actually is not, the combat aspect is anticlimactic in a way and fairly secondary. I wouldn't scratch this game off your list if you're worried about, you know, upsetting your gaming partner. If you're trying to avoid high conflict games, this is not a high conflict game at all. To me, it's actually more spatial treatment of a engine building resource management game than anything. So if you're interested in trying out some games by the designer or this series, maybe don't have a large gaming group, maybe only play with your partner or spouse, for example, you may want to check this out. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching.